role of the storyteller throughout the whole of history has been to tell the truth. Or sometimes you get shot down in flames for it. Calais, the first thing that hits you when you get to the camp is the smell. And as we walked in, I couldn't believe that this level of poverty and squalor was sitting on our doorstep. What I also wasn't prepared for was the amount of kindness and the hospitality. You walk 5 feet and somebody's calling you in for a cup of tea. In tents, flimsy tents, whole families in tents. And the laughter.
Hello, Glenys.
Hello, Camilla.
Hi. So, Glenys, you are a volunteer. You've been volunteering for about a year now in Calais and in Greece helping refugees. But you come back to the UK and you tell people about your experience, don't you, through storytelling, because you're a writer and a storyteller, as well as many other wonderful things. And I've been to see you speak and was really blown away by how beautiful it was, funny and moving and really, really human. And I think that the way that you communicate those real life stories is really important. I mean, what made you start doing that?
There is a saying in the storytelling world, which is an enemy is simply someone whose story you have not yet heard. And once you've heard somebody's story, it's almost impossible to feel any antagonism towards them. And there are people in the camp who've made me promise to tell their stories, to convey that. I don't ever touch on the political. It's purely the human story. And it's offering people a different perspective, saying, this is my experience, I'm not ramming it down your throat, this is my experience and this is the humanity of it. And if you still hate refugees, then there's something wrong with you.
But at least you tried.
At least I've tried. And many refugees have said to me, that it is the most important thing that can be done at this time.
Telling their true stories.
Telling their stories, yeah. And this is stories from the camps, but it's also a bit of my story of volunteering. And Calais, we'd all heard of Calais. I'd heard of Calais and seen it on the news and thought somebody must be doing something. It can't be possible that this is happening between the 5th richest country, England, and the 6th richest country, France. It can't be that this poverty is happening in the middle of these two countries. Somebody must be doing something. So I just kind of watched from afar. Last summer, I was on holiday and I was basking in the sunshine and in my good fortune, listening to the cicalas chatting in the trees and soaking up the sun, and a message on my phone crashed into my perfect world. It was a message from my son that said, "I've volunteered us to go to Calais. We appear to now be activists." Oops. My son Chris had been working at festivals and was incensed by the waste left behind at festivals. People leave everything. So he decided to gather things and to give to homeless groups and to take to Calais. And he volunteered me with my van. So I got back from holiday and went off to the festival. And it was as if 40,000 people had just been up and off. The most insane amount of stuff. And we started gathering tents, sleeping bags, shoes and boots that just 24 hours earlier had been upon the feet of somebody running across a field to meet their friends, would soon be upon the feet of somebody running, willing to risk their lives to reach our shores. Sleeping bags just left would soon be around people quite literally saving their lives. We rammed the van, you couldn't have got another Rizzler paper in there, and we set off with 1,000 smells and stories at our backs.
And so are there many people going over there to volunteer?
There was, you know the photo of Alan Kurdi, the little boy on the beach, and there was a big surge of people after that. And since the camp was demolished, half the camp was demolished, there's been a real drop-off, and now they're desperate for volunteers.
So how many people are there, how many refugees are there approximately in the camps at the moment?
Probably about 5,000 in Calais, about maybe 1,500 in Dunkirk.
And lots of people in this country see the media and think it's all young men and bashing at our door wanting to get jobs and dole money. Is that the case?
I haven't spoken to anyone who knows about benefits.
Not
one person. But I have spoken to people who've made it over, and they're completely baffled as to why they get £36 a week for doing nothing. They think, I want to go to work. And there's some real skilled people. Because it's so expensive to get as far as Calais, probably about £20,000 to get smuggled that far, you've got middle class professionals in the main. And there are more young men than there are families, although there are a lot of families, especially in Dunkirk, is because the young men are the most vulnerable. So if a family had to choose, if they've got money to send anyone, they will pick the young men first, because the young men are the ones that have to go and fight.
So I suppose they see them as the strongest and most able member of the family who can go forwards and find their way to getting work and then securing it for the rest of the family to come over or to send money over?
Well, they're the ones most likely to be killed in their home country.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Right, so it says to protect them from their home country, it's best to send them on.
So especially the little young Afghani boys, because they're taken by the Taliban. In Greece, we would stand on the beaches with life jackets, waving away to get the boats to come into a safe bit on the beach. One night, the smuggler had run the boat into the bottom of the cliffs, abandoned people at the bottom of the cliff. There were 18 children on that boat. And 4 young men had climbed to the top of the cliff to call for help. I went up to the top of the cliff. This is by the light of your phone. While people who were more capable of wading through the sea waded through the sea. I'd started to come back down the mountain with them, and a little voice in the dark called out, "Have you got any children?" And I thought, I hadn't even stopped to give them time. I was in such a hurry to get them back down again. So I said, let's just sit down. I said, for the next hour, I'm your mum. And with that, they just wept. These young men have to be so brave all the time. One of them was soaking wet, so I gave him my hoodie, and he said, I can't possibly take your hoodie. I said, well, technically, I'm your mother. So technically, you have to do as you're told.
So how young are some of these boys that you find in the camps who are on their own?
The youngest is 8.
On his own?
On his own. I've met 2 10-year-olds and they've walked from Afghanistan on their own. 12 is really not unusual. Yeah.
And are they trying to get onto trucks to get into the UK?
Yeah.
What would we need to do in this country to help them, to stop them risking their lives getting to this country on the back of trucks?
Well, a lot of them have family in the UK. So there are lawyers doing some really good work, working really hard to try, because they have a legal right to safe passage. But it's not being adhered to by the different governments, sadly. What they have to do is they have to claim asylum in France, and then through the French asylum process, they might get safe passage to England. The thing is, their only experience of France is being beaten by the police. I have actually come across a 12-year-old with 2 broken arms from the police. And they're tear gassed regularly, you know, it's brutal. So it's very hard to convince somebody to claim asylum in a country where that's their only experience.
And I understand that the police that they've put in charge of taking care of the camps are the CRS, who are specialist, some military police almost, aren't they?
They're riot police. Back in Calais, things have changed slightly. But what we're being fed is statistics. And in these statistics, people's stories are getting lost. The story of Rosie. I was there when Rosie, who's now 4 months old, started making her entrance into the world. Of dear Baghdad, a young man the same age as my son. He was an engineer. He was on around $18,000 a month working on the oil fields. He's now in England, but we stood one night up on a hill looking at the full moon, and he thanked me for my kindness over the previous days. And I thought, I don't really know what I can do. But what I can do is be the person I would wish my son to meet if he ever found himself away from home and without family. And that gives you a great deal of courage. David from Iran, his job was on radio, children's radio, making animal noises. I spent 2 hilarious hours in his caravan. His sheep is second to none. His horse needs a bit of work. There's Armin from Syria, who's a dental surgeon. We could do with one of them. And he's got fed up. He said, if Europe doesn't want me, I'm going back. And if you think it's hard to smuggle yourself out of Syria, it's even harder to smuggle yourself back in. He's finding it impossible to smuggle himself back in again. Majid, who is an artist, is a cartoonist who does the most fabulous paintings. He's stuck there. We're being fed fear. We're being fed fear that is creating a narrative of the other. It's dividing people, and people's stories are getting lost. These beautiful, beautiful people.
And how does your experience in Calais compare to your experience in Greece?
Well, in Greece, when I was there, it was meeting people off the boats. So it's this really intense moment where people are just hanging between life and death. It's really intense. And then you're with them for about an hour, changing clothes, doing, chai and bananas and water and any injuries. And then they're off. Whereas in Calais, you build relationships because it's a more permanent situation. It's extreme. Everything's very extreme. It's extremely kind of funny and extremely distressing.
I suppose like any sort of war situation, people remember the time of the Blitz and London as being a bit similar to that, I suppose, that feeling of everyone in it together. There are extreme highs and extreme lows in that.
It is, and also all the people in there are carrying very, very difficult stories. I'd say the vast majority have escaped really dreadful situations. The vast majority have lost family members, seen people be murdered, been tortured. So you've got like this very intense situation of all these people trying to hold it together with those stories at their backs, which they seem to be very graceful about. And people say, oh, you know, why are they all coming to the UK? And they're not. There are around, apparently, 11 million refugees from Syria. If you just add Iraq and Afghanistan, that's without Somalia, Eritrea and everything, that probably takes it to a conservative 18 million. And there's about 1.5 million coming to Europe. So why is everyone coming to Europe? They're not, basically.
So we'd really, if we allocated people from the camps to different countries, we wouldn't even really notice them.
Not really.
Amongst us. It's because we concentrate them in areas.
Yeah. Like I was saying, this lovely young lad who I know is from Syria, and his town, his city was of 300,000 people. It's now over 1.5 million. So his city, that's been under siege for 8 months, has taken in the same amount of refugees as the whole of Europe.
And they don't have the resources to support them, whereas we do.
So if they can do it, and people want to go back generally, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. They're escaping war and they're escaping fear.
Yeah.
But hopefully once that's gone, they'll go back. Everyone wants to go back to the country that they know and love and the family that they know and love.
What I really want to say is best said in the words of a young woman. She is a British Somali poet. You may have heard her poem, Worcestershire. For me, anyway, it speaks about what I would like to say, the message I would like to get across. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well, your neighbours running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. And the boy you went to school with, who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory, is carrying a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. You only leave home when home chases you, fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you'd ever thought of doing, until the blade burnt threats into your neck, and even then you held the anthem under your breath. Only tearing up your passport in the airport toilets, sobbing as each mouthful of paper makes it clear you won't be going back. No one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms beneath trains, under carriages. No one sits for days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspapers unless the miles travelled means something more than the journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, to be pitied. No one wants refugee camps. or strip searches that leave your body aching. Or prison. For prison is safer than a city of fire. And one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one skin would be thick enough. All those words, go home blacks, dirty immigrants, refugees. They smell strange. They messed up their country, now they want to mess up ours. How do the words, the dirty looks, roll off your backs unless the words are softer than a limb torn off? The words more tender than 14 men between your legs. The insults easier to swallow than rubble than bone than your child's body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark, home is the barrel of a gun, and no one leaves home until home has chased you to its shores, telling you to leave, telling you to run, to leave your clothes behind, to crawl through the deserts, to wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hunger, beg, forget your pride. Your survival's more important. No one leaves home unless home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here.
So you've performed your stories, you've told your stories at a few places in Cambridge, and have you taken it elsewhere outside of Cambridge?
I went to Holland and Belgium. I went to Brussels after the bombings. So I went round schools and they were amazing. Teenagers are brilliant.
You spoke to that age group, the teenage age group.
Yeah, lots of teenagers, a couple of universities, and then some adults as well.
Will you take it to schools in the UK? Have you got more places to take your stories to?
I really hope so. I have gone to a few schools, and I really think that's the way to go. Because this hatred and fear is learnt. I firmly believe that we are lean towards support for our fellow humans. It's a really good human design that helping someone makes you feel good.
It's good, it's like a natural thing in us to do.
Yeah.
More people should exercise that.